FBI wasn't looking at me real fondly, and especially the people at headquarters. They were thinking I was a traitor for having given out this very dirty laundry. J. Edgar Hoover had an old rule that said, never embarrass the view. I often recite J. Edgar Hoover's favorite poem, so if we get no questions here, we'll go to that. His favorite poem was on loyalty, and so this whole rule about never speaking out of school, and I violated it. And so when I had the chance to then testify to the Judiciary Committee, I knew that I was going to have to justify why the truth matters. And I came up with 4 real reasons, and one of them was the victims. I, at the time, didn't even know any of the victims. I'm trying to think if I knew anybody tangentially. Well, I knew the FBI. There was an FBI agent who died in 9/11. He ran into the building to help, and he had been killed. I didn't know him. But later, I did come to know many of the victims. Some of the ladies who pushed Monica, if you know Monica, she's one of my friends now, so I do know some now, but at the time I didn't. But I was the victim witness coordinator. And I knew that no matter what the crime, if you are the victim of a crime, you will not rest. You will always want to know the truth. Even years and years later, we have cold cases 20, 30 years later that the poor victim who's traumatized is seeking the truth. So that was one reason, and it tied with, of course, an FBI law enforcement objective. Another one of my reasons is that if we didn't tell the truth in the FBI, how are we going to continue to recruit good people to go into the FBI? What we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up recruiting a bunch of ambitious people who are willing to shade and skew the truth. Exactly the opposite of my PowerPoint. Very self-serving. But the real reason, I said, that the overarching reason for the truth is because we cannot have a remedy or an answer or a potential way of fixing some of these problems without beginning with the truth. To think that you don't need to look backward and just move forward is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I know some of you may be Obama supporters, and I walked, I door knocked in the 2 weeks. I went to bus stations handing out Vote Obama. I did a ton of stuff. But to get him, I thought he was the better choice. But his statement now of we must only look forward and not backward,
right.
That's actually a version of what this neocon idea is. And Susskind, I think it was Susskind wrote this, or one of them did. They wrote that the neocon ideology fundamentally is we make our own reality. You little people out there, not like us, the neocons who build things, you get mired in reality, but we get to make our own reality. And the truth is, if that's what you want to do agenda-wise, if you're going to go forward and, okay, Iraq, Iran, we're going to start unjustified wars. We're going to, the Constitution doesn't matter anymore. We're going to have a strong unitary executive who has the power to make decisions, so we're in a war. All of these things, if you want to do that, certainly you can't have people asking for reality. I'll stop and ask for questions, but I do want to suggest everyone stay in reality. It's going to be... The reality facing us is not pleasant, and if you start saying bad things about the country going bankrupt and losing wars and all the massacres and all these things, everyone, even your best friends, will not like it. It's so bad to know the reality right now. It's a terrible, it's a burden. I sometimes feel like Cassandra, constantly warning and nobody listening to me. It's just a curse. But we've got to stay in reality, because the other option, which is just to go with this crazy disconnect, is absolute spells. There's no hope. There's absolutely no hope if we just continue to move forward and launch another war as an answer, etc., which is the case. Okay, I'm going to stop.
I asked this yesterday, but I want to ask you directly because you're FBI. I read in a lot of my research that FBI confiscated security camera video from across the street from the Pentagon, a gas station, a hotel. The Pentagon itself is covered, every inch of the ground, building, and airspace is covered by security cameras. Excuse my French, where the fuck is the video of a giant plane hitting the Pentagon?
Well, the question is...
Where's the video of the Pentagon being hit by a giant plane? The FBI is withholding those tapes. What does the FBI say to the public about why those tapes are withheld? What are they saying about what's on those tapes? And when do we get to see them?
Of course, I retired 5 years ago. And while I was in the FBI, I could be up here for hours telling you what I tried to do and pushing the envelope. There were things in the Patriot Act. I spotted immediately that the FBI had no way of keeping rein on the national security laws, all kinds of things. I actually don't know anything specifically about the cameras at the Pentagon. I can opine, though, because I've seen what happens in all other kinds of cases like this. Even in Minneapolis, the FBI had a case where they grabbed cameras of our main news people in a parking lot because they said, oh, well, they got an informant on thing. And we had Kunstler come in and sue the FBI for those cameras to come back. William Kunstler's dead. And I think if William Kunstler was here, we'd have a chance, perhaps, because he won. He won the case in Minneapolis where the FBI grabbed, improperly violated First Amendment and grabbed media cameras. But what will happen is, what they'll say is that, of course, the FBI is the agency that is supposed to investigate, and because they have this wide tasking, they are certainly entitled to take all evidence, the cockpit recorders, all cameras, and once they have it in evidence, for it then to be subject to a FOIA request or for people to see it, the victims who asked to hear the cockpit recorder of Flight 93 were the only group I know, and partly because there have been some laws just recently passed that said victims should have some rights. And so because of that, FBI Director Mueller did play that cockpit recorder beforehand. But as a rule, no, the FBI will almost never entertain requests to share any evidence, even after a case is long over and your FOIA should come into place. When there's no longer any reason to keep that evidence, they will still continue to obstruct this. A lot of it is just hubris to some extent. They can. And that's my best answer to the question. Again, I don't know about it, but obviously it's a key thing. It's a key request to make to get more truth out is to see the cameras firsthand. Yes?
How does the FBI know so quickly the names of the 19 hijackers?
Yeah. Well, I saw that in our office immediately. Here's my best answer to that. I certainly was not at headquarters or part of this command post, but I think they did very quickly get the passenger manifestos. So they did get all of the people that were on the planes. It's now known, again, dribs and drabs, we got to be thankful for the little bit of dribs and drabs, but it's now known that the two pilots, Midar and Hamzi, were on the CIA's terrorist list. And so there's a terrible failure of them being allowed to come into California. They actually were staying in an apartment building that was owned by an FBI source. I mean, there's so many things on here. I've even heard that they're connected to the same cleric that was connected to Hassan and the Nigerian underpant bomber. I'm not sure.